Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. Tyler, where did the weekend go?
It went away way too quickly. It went way too quickly. That's what happened.
It's like I blinked my eyes. It was Friday, and then boom.
That's how it works.
Waking up, it's Monday. But we're excited that you are starting off your Monday with us here on the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside the one, the only Tyler Keep, as we work to bring you all the educational, informative, exciting interviews of all things related to everything that is happening throughout our country and Oakland County and the state of Michigan right now as we all continue to try to navigate COVID-19. It continues to impact every single part of our lives. Obviously, the big thing going forward right now as we are starting to head back into the new school year. The clock is ticking down. We hate to say it, but summer is almost over. It has been an incredible summer with us. However, it is winding down, and now the focus is turning over to education as parents try to navigate what are they going to do with their kids as they head back to school, Tyler?
Yeah, it's a tough situation for them, and it's an interesting situation for them, an intricate situation where they're balancing their regular lives, their work lives, and sending their kids back to school in a situation that's just as uncertain as everything else in our society right now.
Parents are getting pretty creative, and we're going to start off our headlines this morning. If you head over to civiccentertv.com, click on coronavirus, and each and every morning before we go on air here, we do update the headlines, and the focus really today is looking ahead to the new school year. Parents are starting to get pretty creative, as I mentioned, because they're now looking and considering learning pods. I don't know if many of you have heard about these, but as the school year approaches, some parents are turning to the learning pods to help with their child's education. The pods typically are made up of 3 to 7 children, often in the same neighborhood, as a way to help working parents secure reliable childcare. It also gives kids a break from the computer screen and the ability to interact with their peers. There is concern, though, that learning pods could be widening the opportunity gap because some parents can't afford to hire tutors or a nanny to oversee the group. However, this is just one way of many that parents are trying to get creative as they continue to navigate COVID-19 and its impact on our school system.
Yeah, it's something that is going to be a problem for a lot of parents as they go into the fall. How are you going to provide adequate childcare for your kids while you go back to work? Maybe you're working from home and don't have the ability to pay attention to your kids, and they're learning also while they're at home, or you got to work outside the home and can't afford to have a sitter in or a nanny in every day, and it's going to be a problem for these kids and these parents as school begins in a variety of different ways in the fall and continues to change.
So I know one of the things too that could be a consideration maybe for people who live in an apartment complex, you can utilize the community center or the office space that they typically have, like a business center. That could be one option for parents to consider as well. So trying to get creative, trying to navigate, everyone pulling resources as they try to find the best avenue for their child as they head back to school. So one of the other big things, and this is really no surprise, but I'm telling you, this is going to be a continuing problem in the coming weeks, Tyler. 38 students have now tested positive for COVID-19 at the end of the first week of classes at Central Michigan University. University officials issued a warning to students to stop throwing large parties, or the college could be forced to switch to remote learning. Following the surge in cases, students were also reminded they could face fines or even suspension from school if they attend large parties. So they really are trying to find ways to get across to students, college students, that you need to start taking this seriously because it could have a lasting impact and you could be booted out of school.
And this is going to be the big challenge for colleges that are having in-person learning in the fall and are inviting their students back, is ultimately they're not going to behave one way or another based on your regulations. They have to make that decision themselves. And even in a situation like what's going on at CMU, where they're saying, hey, if you don't shape up, we're going to go entirely remote, that's not enough incentive. The students may be like, okay, that's fine. I'm fine not having to go to class and just, sitting on my computer all day doing classes and looking up the answers. I'm perfectly okay with that. You have to also put further incentive in there for them, and that further incentive is saying, if we figure out that that's where you were at, through our contact tracing, through what we see, through what we hear, you're going to get suspended, possibly kicked out of school. That's the measure you have to take to get the message across. Good on them.
Yeah. So one of the things I'd like your thoughts on this is the colleges are trying to come up with all these different ways. They're putting protocols in place. One of the things that they are looking at doing, and some have even implemented, is an app. So students have to basically check in every day saying that, yes, they feel like they're, safe. They have no symptoms, this, that, and the other. But the app also uses technology to trace them and their whereabouts. And there is a concern there where some students feel like that's a violation of their privacy.
And to an extent, I can see why that would be the case. There's not exactly licensed to be tracking where your students are going at any given point in time. That's not something they sign up for necessarily when they agree to be students at your institution. However, so I do believe that there should be, in that case, an option for them to disable any sort of tracking in that application. That may be the case, like most applications do have. But if that's not the case, then that does seem like it's a violation, and that could be a problem for these universities.
Yeah, and it's not just colleges. I know some large manufacturing plants or companies, I believe Amazon has something too, like when you're in their massive warehouse, it's tracking where you are. So we'll see how that all goes forward, but another way that they're trying to help contain this virus. So also you'll find on civiccentertv.com, head on over to that website. State Fair is going to go virtual. The 2020 Michigan State Fair will not be held at the Suburban Collection Showplace at Novi, but instead will be offered in a virtual format. Fair is going to be held September 3rd through the 7th as a free online event. It will include hourly social media posts of interactive contests, activities, live demonstrations, performances, historical and educational features, and more. Is it really going to work?
This is the way things are going. Whether or not it's a similar experience that people will enjoy, that's to be said. You have to kind of experience it first. But a lot of these organizations that are holding these big events, that go to places like the Suburban Collection or go to other places throughout the state to hold these conventions and these events, are going through virtual means now as our technology is more advanced, and there are experts out there who are able to guide them through those situations smoothly. And it makes the event work, but whether or not it's the same kind of feel or same sort of experience that you get with an in-person event like you get at the state fair, that's to be seen.
For me, I will admit, I don't think I've been to the fair since it moved to the showplace. It just had that appeal when it was in Detroit at the big state fairgrounds, and then when it got canceled and then it moved, still never felt like the fair to me. But going virtual again, but people forget that they raise a lot of money for various organizations to help some of these nonprofit organizations and to continue the educational aspect of the state fair. And so they're hoping that people are still going to log on and participate so that they can raise money for these good events. Are you going to watch anything?
I might. I may participate. It depends what's going on there. I have to look into it a little bit more. But yeah, having these events continue to go on, continue to raise those funds and raise that awareness is an absolute service to the community. So it's good that we are in the times that we're in now, where we have the technology and we have the people that have the expertise to allow events like the state fair to continue to go on despite the circumstances.
Can't get a candy apple through the web, though.
No, you can't. You cannot. No Zoom candy apples.
So you'll find that and more over on civiccentertv.com. Also, we want to remind you, we're trying to make it really easy for you to help you navigate all things COVID-19 because information changes daily. So we've also put links over on civiccentertv.com to CDC, the latest resources from the federal government, the state of Michigan, Oakland County, a lot of great information that we get out of Oakland County. I check their website every morning as well, but also with our local municipalities. If you live in West Bloomfield, you can find all that information right here on Civic Center TV. So be sure to tune in or just go on. It's a click away we put all that information, Tyler, just a click away. And obviously, of course, you can watch us every day, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. till noon on civiccentertv.com or on the Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Listen to us on the radio. You met someone this week and they listened to us on the radio, 89.3 Lakes FM and 88.1 FM The Biff. So a lot of easy places for you to be able to find us. Also, we want to remind you today, we are on the Facebook page of the West Bloomfield Parks, so you can head over there. They will be streaming this live as well. So we say thank you to the West Bloomfield Parks. And we will actually be talking with them a little bit later in the Megacast, which again, the Megacast, we have TV, we have web, we have radio, we have it all here on the Oakland County Megacast. But first, we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we are going to be speaking with the professor and chair of Department of Sociology, Anthropology, Social Work, and Criminal Justice from Oakland University. A lot to talk about, especially about the protests that we have had over the weekend here in Detroit, as well as the news that's coming out of Wisconsin with the latest police shooting. So a lot to get to when we come back after this quick break.
Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keene. Our first guest today, we want to start off with Jo Reger. She's the professor and chair of Department of Sociology, Anthropology, Social Work, and Criminal Justice at Oakland University. You cover a lot of topics, and right now, during the pandemic, there has been a re-energized of social justice with so many protests. And then we saw the latest protest over the weekend in the city of Detroit. What a time for you to be a professor, huh? What's your take on everything that's going on?
Well, I think, there's so much to think about. And I think one of the questions I get asked the most is, what's going on? Why now? Why George Floyd? Why does this keep continuing? And so it makes us think about how social change really happens in this country, and that often social movements, they build and they build and they build, and then something comes along and it's the right moment for for protests to happen, for people to gather, for change to start to be talked about.
So during the pandemic and with COVID-19, we've seen the disparities of our entire society come to light. So do you think that helped re-energize this movement?
Well, I think the pandemic played a couple roles. The first one is we have seen the health disparities. We've seen by zip code who lives where and what race they are and the rates of infection. And that has everything to do with healthcare opportunities, poverty, just a range of institutions that we see are really failing a portion of our population to keep them safe. So I think that's part of it. So that's become more and more evident. But I also think with the pandemic, we've been home. So we're on our phones, we're looking at the news, we're not just noticing an event and moving on in our life. A lot of us have had time to really kind of dig into the news of the day, to think about what's going on. And I think that's played a role too.
So what are your thoughts on what makes a movement continue to fuel long-term change?
Well, I think, a lot of times we make this mistake that it's only when we see big national protests that a movement's in existence. Black Lives Matter as a protest movement really builds on the civil rights movement of the 50s, 60s in this country, has been active for a while, active at the grassroots community level. And so, now we're in a place where we see all of these very visible national protests, partially because they're getting a lot of attention, right? So those protests could have existed in the past. So what keeps it motivated is that people continue to be active even if we don't see them all the time in the public sphere. And when issues aren't dealt with, when, I think for a lot of people, when George Floyd was killed, we're like, this is enough. We've seen so much of this. We can't see any more of it. And now it's continuing, and we see how those keep sparking individual events. So part of it is that movements don't go away, but part of it is that issues don't get resolved completely either.
Joe Reger with us on the Oakland County Megacast, professor and chair of the Department of Sociology over at Oakland University. You have such great insight to offer your students. How do you encourage them to get involved? Do you encourage them to get involved, or what's the historical aspect of this?
Well, I think for our students, what everybody here at Oakland wants is we want our students to know how to look at information and to evaluate whether it's trustworthy, where it came from, who's saying it. So we want them to have what we call information literacy. But I want my students to do critical thinking. It's not my job to make my students into activists. It is my job to help students think about the world around them through a critical lens and to think about what kind of forces there are in society that shape people. And a lot of that can happen with a historical lens. So you can, if we're going to talk about things like Black Lives Matter or the Me Too movement of a couple of years ago, we have to look at where all those issues came from, and that we have a long history in this country of addressing these events, of protest movements forming. And I think that's what I really want my students to think about is these are not new things. These are old things embedded in our society. And how are you going to look at them and think about them in a way that weighs, the ideas and the opinions you're being given, and that you weigh the facts and make an informed decision. And that's what I think makes a good citizen.
We are speaking with Joe Reger from Oakland University. We forget, I think, sometimes when we had like the Million Man March, and those were more recent, and to the younger generation can kind of remember it. But when it comes to the long-term civil rights issues or women's voting rights, as the older population that was a part of these protests that helped spearhead these movements, as they age and die off, those stories aren't told. Was it easier for this newer generation to kind of forget the importance of being involved in how change happens?
That's an interesting question, because I think right now we're in this moment where young people in particular, and I'm talking high school, college age people, are very tuned into all of this. Now, they may not know the histories and the complicated histories, because one of the things we do is when we tell the history of something, we make it very simple. And we lose all kind of the interesting complexities of, the civil rights movement. And, Rosa Parks becomes an old lady who sat down on a bus. And that's really not her story at all. So I think they don't necessarily have that. But I do think they're really tuned in, and they're very concerned about what's happening in the world around them. And I think a lot of what we're seeing happening today is really being led by young men and women. We've seen, Black Lives Matter marches that were organized by high school students. And so this is something where they may not have the complete history, but they do have the passion, and they are looking very critically at the world around them.
So generations build generations. You learn from the past, you learn from people before you, and that's what a lot of our younger people today are doing. They're taking lessons from the civil rights movement, from the women's suffrage movement, from other sociological movements and justice movements in the past in our country, and now they're taking action. So what do you see with this younger generation, millennials like myself, Gen Z behind us, that are taking such action in favor of social justice movements? Where do you see that next culture shift coming? Do you think when these generations are coming into power and are older, that we're going to see a shift in the power dynamics of our country?
I think we could. We know that social protest does make a difference, and sometimes where it happens is it may be aimed at laws or policies, but a lot of times what happens is it diffuses into the culture. And so, for example, today there are many things that the women's movement wanted that we now kind of accept as normal, like boys and girls are equal and they can both play sports and things like that. So I do think there's a culture shift coming. I think that it's not going to be completely driven by the young, because we also know that in these protest marches, there are people who are of all ages there. So there's something about when people begin to discuss the issues that are happening in culture, that are a part of the culture, that become a little more critical and notice things, that there is a shift coming. Now, all shifts come with backlashes. So we know this, that when movements move forward, often there are forces in society that push them back. So it'll be interesting to see where we are in the next 5-10 years, how people are going to be thinking about these issues, or is there going to be a backlash pushing back against some of them?
Joe Reger, professor and chair of the Department of Sociology, Anthropology, Social Work, and Criminal Justice at the Oakland University, joining us on the Megacast. What an exciting time right now with everything that's going on in our country to be a professor and to have these movements and these issues front and center to help address what is happening in our society. Does it help the younger generation or your students relate to historical events in a bigger lens?
I think it does. I think it's important for them to think about kind of, to get this sense of this history. I think we forget that, we're at the 100-year anniversary of women's suffrage. Women begin to articulate this and work for 72 years. Many of the original women working for suffrage died before they ever saw the chance to vote. So I think when we start to put things in that context, that, our history isn't that old for a lot of things. The Voting Rights Acts of 1964 and 1965, which largely re-enfranchised African American men and women in this country, that's not that long ago. And so I think having that sense of the immediacy of history is important for students to understand, because it makes it seem like it hasn't always been this way, and that people worked very hard to have some of the things that we now enjoy today.
So with so many movements going on and so much passion around so many different issues, historically, what has made a movement successful that has moved from a protest into policy and change?
Well, I would say probably the most important ingredient is time. Movements often have goals that they work a very long time for. And if for example, if we take the LGBTQ movement in this country, this movement has been in existence in this country in one form or the other, really organized since the 1930s and 40s. But now we see here in the 21st century, we have marriage equality, still many other things to go. So what it takes is, it takes organizations that are able to sustain themselves over time. It takes communities of activists who are often embedded in networks, or what we call grassroots, in their communities, keeping working on issues. It takes institutions like LGBTQ centers, LGBTQ studies like we have here at Oakland. Those kind of things have to be in place for a movement to survive over time. And as it does, we're able to gain more and more laws and policies. At the same time, culture begins to shift. And sometimes those things have to come together. So for a law to be passed, the culture has to shift at the same time.
Jo Reger with us. She's a professor and the chair of the Department of Sociology, Anthropology, and Social Work and Criminal Justice at Oakland University, with us on the Oakland County Megacast today across our family of TV, radio, and other media outlets. Jo, you've written extensively on the women's movements and on feminism as well. So shifting over to women's movements and the development of those over the course of history, we're looking at recent years where we've had major political party involvement by people like Geraldine Ferraro, Hillary Clinton, Sarah Palin. Now Kamala Harris is on the vice presidential ticket for the Democratic Party. How far along has the movements that were spearheaded early on by people like Susan B. Anthony come, and how much further does that still need to go before we're at a point where the goals of these movements are being truly fulfilled?
Well, I think, women have made some major gains in terms of thinking about politics in this country. We have more women in politics now than we ever have. We're still not at a point where there's some sort of equality in terms of men and women in Congress, in Senate, as presidential candidates. And, as we saw with the candidacy of Hillary Clinton, no matter how you felt about her as a candidate, she had a kind of scrutiny that male candidates very rarely have. Her pantsuits, her hairdress, the way she wore her hair, her demeanor. And we're starting to see some of that again with Kamala Harris. Like, how is she carrying herself? Is she too aggressive? And so I think those are cultural things, right? Those are shifts we have to make about kind of what we expect women to be and how we expect women to act. And as long as we have those kind of notions that hold women to a different standard and critique them in a different way, I think we're still going to have trouble having just equality, because we're tending to judge women in different ways. So I think, if Susan B. Anthony could see today, I think she'd be delighted. I think she was a radical, she was not a mainstream person in her time. I think she would be delighted, but I think she'd also be concerned that when women won the right to vote, we didn't change the political system in the way I think she thought it was going to happen.
So interesting to have you on our show to speak about these topics. I mean, because we're still seeing that today, even with Governor Whitmer, where during COVID, the conversation was shifting to, well, who's doing her hair? Who's doing her makeup? Where we wouldn't ask that if it was a man.
Right. Exactly. And some of the things that people have said about her, it's frankly very what we would call misogyny, right? It's instead of engaging with her as a politician who's making decisions, whether you like them or not, and critiquing those decisions, it gets really nasty, really quickly, about her as a woman. And so that tells us that we don't really see that about men. So, it tells us that we're not having even the playing field when it comes to electoral politics. We know women still have trouble raising the same amount of money as men do, things like that. So we are thinking about all of those things when, we're thinking about what's happening today.
Professor, with the influx of 24-hour news cycles, social media has really change the way we're getting information, how we're getting information. People feel bombarded right now with so much negativity. Do you think that's going to have a long-term impact on our history and some of these movements and where we go from here next?
I think there are people who are glued to social media because they find it really, my daughter said to me today, TikTok is where I find out about most world events. So there's that, right? So there's something about how we're getting information. A lot of times that comes in a negative cast. But I also think that part of the whole rise of these Black Lives Matter protests is because we saw it. We saw George Floyd die. Over and over again, to the point where people were saying, please stop doing this. This is becoming, this is not information anymore. There's something about this that just feels really distasteful to show someone's death repeatedly. But I think sometimes when people see, they they understand things differently than when they just hear. And we know this, this is a lesson learned in the civil rights movement. When the TV cameras saw the high school kids with the police dogs set on them and the fire hoses, people in the North who had heard about these things but never seen it began to call their legislators and say, why is this happening? How can this be America? So there is something, I understand the negativity turns people off and it's hard. There's a lot of misinformation, but there's also something about the fact that we live in such a visually connected world that is very powerful for some movements.
So we are speaking with Joe Reger, professor and chair of the Department of Sociology, Anthropology, Social Work, and Criminal Justice at Oakland University. Just a couple more minutes with you here on the Megacast. You spoke of George Floyd, but then over the weekend we also saw the shooting of the individual in Wisconsin. It was a black male who was shot in the back, and I try to never jump to conclusions on these cases because we never know all the surrounding events. But when we're still seeing things like this, because everyone does have a camera on their cell phone, do you feel that this movement is going to have a lasting impression on the police agencies, law enforcement? So in 20 or 30 years, we're going to be talking about this issue like we were talking about voting rights in the past.
I think it is, and I'm really glad you brought that up because I have a colleague who studies policing, and we're actually going to be taking part in what's called an office hours from the Center for Civic Engagement here at Oakland, and anybody can join us. But there are going to be three of us, Jay Meehan, Watoy Robbie, and myself, and we're going to talk about protests, policing, and communities, and kind of what's happening now. And he's really an expert in this area of policing and how policing has changed over time, how protests bring about it. And then my colleague Watoy Robbie is going to talk about the way communities really respond to policing, fear of police, and the protests that are happening. So that's going to be September 2nd here at Oakland. And so I really encourage people who are interested to come and listen, because I really appreciate the expertise of my colleagues to talk about things like, what's happening in communities, what's happening with policing, where have we been and where could we go?
Professor, we thank you so much for taking time to speak to us this morning on the Oakland County Megacast. You have so much knowledge and so many insights that you are able to share with us and our listeners and viewers. So again, everyone out there, September 2nd, we'll look forward to engaging in some of those events that's happening through Oakland University. We're going to take a quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast, and when we come back, we're going to be shifting a little bit to talk about the environment. What is happening with the environment now as we continue to navigate the coronavirus as well? You're watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast.
Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/contain-COVID. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Parks COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keefe. And each and every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, we continue to invite exciting guests, educational guests here on the Oakland County Megacast as we all continue to navigate COVID-19 and the pandemic. Sometimes when we're going through a crisis such as this, we forget about other important topics, and one of those being the environment. Working today for a cleaner tomorrow. That is the mission of the Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision. And right now we want to go ahead and bring in Dolores Perales, Environment and Community Sustainability Specialist here on the Oakland County Megacast. Good morning, Dolores. Thank you so much for being with us.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Tell us a little bit more about your organization, how it got started, and what is your goal today?
Yeah, so Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision is a 501c3 nonprofit organization located on the southwest side of Detroit. Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision works on a variety of different projects and issues that are, solely located in Southwest Detroit, as well as within West Dearborn. But SDEV, we focus, our mission is to improve the environment and strengthen the economy of Southwest Detroit. And we do this through the partnership with residents, community organizations, local government agencies, schools, businesses, industry to combat various environmental issues, which include air quality, blight, which is like illegal dumping, graffiti, and homes, as well as incompatible land use. So we are essentially a coalition of residents, community organizations, and school businesses working to improve the environment and strengthen the economy of Southwest Detroit the best that we possibly can. And we are a community-based organization where we try to voice our concerns and represent the residents of Southwest Detroit the best we can to ensure a environmentally healthy community and make sure that Southwest Detroit becomes a model neighborhood for the rest of Detroit.
I think a lot of people don't realize that Southwest Detroit is really Michigan's most polluted area. Sometimes it's been called toxic town. The AP just had a story out today about how oil and gas operations have been allowed to stop monitoring for hazardous emissions due to the coronavirus pandemic. I believe that went into effect back in March. But sometimes it's hard to figure out what's going on with these companies, I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely.
So what are your thoughts on that? And quite frankly, when you hear something like that, after all the work that you and your organization has done, does it make you mad?
Definitely. I know a lot of us, we are doing our absolute best to, improve the environment, whether that's through, with air quality or land use. So when you hear industry still, doing things like this, it becomes a little disheartening, but it also allows us to, strengthen our ties with community to ensure that we are, voicing our opinions, advocating the best that we can, and ensuring that we are doing everything we possibly can to make sure that residents have the highest quality of living that they possibly can. And so when this happens, that just means that it's just something else that we have to work on to ensure that residents don't have to continue to, be subjugated to issues like this, but that we can fight it and ensure that residents no longer have to, be complicit when it comes to industry.
We're speaking with Dolores Perales, Environmental and Community Sustainability Specialist with Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision. Dolores, we're going to take a quick break. We seem to be getting a little bit of audio feedback from your Zoom interview, so we're going to see if we can't fix that just a little bit, but we'll take a quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast, see if we can get that situated. But we'll be back in just a few minutes.
This may seem uncomfortable, but so is being hooked to an IV, sleeping in a hospital bed, and fighting for your life. When it comes to COVID-19, comfort is not as important as saving lives. Wearing a mask can greatly reduce the chance of spreading the virus. So mask up, Michigan, every time you leave home.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. So we went ahead and we switched over to the phone. So we're going to bring back Dolores. Dolores, good morning. Can you hear us?
Yes. Hi. Is this better?
Yes.
much
Thank
better.
you so
Thank you.
much. We appreciate it. We just wanted to make sure that everyone was able to hear and get all the information that you were providing for us. So again, what programs are you working on right now?
So currently, myself, I work in the Land and Water Department here at Southwest Detroit Environmental Division. So I mainly work on our various place-making projects that SDV has put in across Southwest Detroit. So I help with the design and implementation of these projects, as well as the sustainability of those projects afterwards. But SDV is also working on other projects within our Healthy Air Department, which focuses on not only working on indoor air quality, but then also outdoor air quality, such as, communicating and working with the local businesses around, as well as working with the diesel trucks with our with that program, where essentially SDV helps retrofit diesel truck engines to ensure that it is not polluting as much. So I know that's one of the Clean Diesel program is one of the main programs that the Healthy Air Department works on when it comes to outdoor air quality as well.
Dolores, during the pandemic, there's been so much focus on all the other issues that are coming up with the pandemic, whether it be schooling, whether it be jobs, whether it be the economy, whatever the case may be. Does it seem like issues of environmental importance have been not necessarily forgotten about, but put on a back burner? And why is it so important, if that is the case, that we continue to focus on environmental issues even during this time?
Yeah, so regardless of what's going on, our environment is still being impacted, whether that be, through air quality with local businesses within Southwest Detroit being notorious polluters, or it can be as simple as just incompatible land use, where we have a lot of blight going on within the city, and due to, COVID, a lot of services have been, pushed back. So a lot of bulk and trash pickups have been pushed back, which causes an increase of blight in the neighborhoods, which in turn can lead to a public health risk, where a lot of rats and other vermin come through, and they could track disease and bring them into homes, etc. But then there's also the issue where, how we brought in the economy part, where a lot of residents have been laid off, or they have been put on unemployment, where they no longer are able to afford the cost of food and just basic necessities that they need. So one of the things that I know at SDV that we are trying to do is that we are providing free produce for residents within the community, where we understand that, especially right now, especially in the midst of COVID, where residents have become unemployed, they have lost their jobs, and they are struggling to feed their families. Where in Southwest Detroit we have a lot of local mom and pop shops with a lot of local small markets, but the cost of produce and fresh foods, meats, etc., from those smaller markets tend to be a little bit more pricey compared to your traditional Meijer or Walmart or large-scale supermarket. So because of that, there becomes this gap where residents are unable to purchase these foods, and then it becomes again that public health risk, where residents are going to be then in turn purchasing items like ramen noodles or bulk out items where it'll last a long time to feed their families, but it may not be the healthiest option, which in turn can affect residents, leading to obesity, diabetes, etc., where they're eating more of this processed food. But some of the things that we're trying to work on is, kind of cultivating the land that hasn't been used, as well as using the projects that we already have going on to ensure that we are meeting this gap for residents and providing access to free, healthy, fresh produce, so that residents can incorporate that into their diets, but then also have access to green public spaces where I know a lot of residents, including like myself, when COVID hit, we were all cooped up in our houses. We were getting a little bit stir crazy, et cetera. But it's very, very important, especially in Southwest Detroit, to have access to these green spaces where residents will be able to just to walk, sit, play just in like local parks, gardens, just space that they would be able to just get out of their home in, and ensuring that we have these spaces that readily available for our residents, but making sure these spaces are like clean, is very important due to like that blight issue I was telling you about. So those are issues that we're working on, and these are issues that we are currently like tackling to ensure that residents have access to that equitable green space, but then also have access to fresh, healthy produce.
Dolores, during COVID-19 and the pandemic, where some families are shifting to survival mode, how do you get across to them the importance of the long-term effects of our environment and the need to continue to be environmentally friendly in all things that they do?
I think the best way that we're able to do that is because we can't really meet with residents one-on-one like we used to, especially due to COVID. We tried to work with them via like Zoom, having like Zoom meetings where we're able to talk to them one-on-one about issues that they find important, especially when it comes to air quality. I know our Healthy Air Department has had a number of Zoom meetings when it comes to, for example, like Marathon Petroleum and what's going on over there, where they've had meetings with residents to figure out like what to do and moving forward, et cetera. But we've also been extremely active on social media. We've been putting in like informational posts, whether that be like about the Southwest Detroit environment or the environment as a whole across the United States. But we try to cater it to, different like age levels, different groups, where some may be for more of the younger audience, like teenagers, to kind of get involved with some of our projects, where we let people know that we are having projects going on where they can still become involved, still be hands-on if they so choose to do so. But then also we try to make our department still very accessible as we can. So we're available for like phone meetings, Zoom calls, distant meetings, et cetera. So I think still educating residents on what's going on, whether that be through like, our youth programming where we had interns during the summer, meeting with residents as they request to meet with us, just showing that accessibility is very important, where I know a lot of people have like pulled back from being like accessible to individuals, but where we want to be accessible while still like keeping, a safe distance, still, keeping COVID restrictions like in mind, while still like, providing what residents need from us. So I think that's the main piece, where residents are still invested and still wanting to learn about the environment, still wanting to tackle the issues that they face, and just letting them know that we're right there with them and we're taking precautions every step of the way and still finding ways to meet and to tackle issues that they want us to tackle. We're almost like that. We're the instrument for them. We're that where they tell us like what they want, what they expect from us, what they need from us, and we go out and we do it. We find ways to, make ends meet. We find ways to provide for them in ways that they feel like they are able to. We act as their voice. So whenever they need us, whenever they, would like us to do something like for them when it comes to the environment, whether that's like, standing up in public meetings, finding, creating more accessible social media posts, which, could be like from a variety of things, like whether that's like from, children's, more so like children's posts to like, more of like mature content about like the environment. We find ways to kind of cater to what they want, and then we provide it to them.
Dolores Perales with us. She is the Environment and Community Sustainability Specialist at the Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And Dolores, you had mentioned a couple of times throughout this interview green space. And for those that aren't familiar, what is green space in an urban and suburban sense, and how does that not only help to be good stewards of the environment and help our environment out, but also help establish greater community sustainability as well?
Yeah, so just green space in like an urban or suburban environment is just land that is partially or completely covered with like grass, trees, shrubs, other vegetation. So like examples of green space that anybody can find in their local communities could be like, parks and community gardens. And that's one of the main things that we try to implement here within the Southwest side, where a lot of our land is not used, and we try to create pop-up spaces, parks, and small community gardens to ensure residents that they have access to green space, and that this green space has become something that they can take control of if they so choose to. By putting in green space across like Southwest Detroit, I know a lot of the projects that we work on with our green space, like for example, like I'll use our Cadillac Urban Gardens, Scarsony Park, and our orchard, Merritt Street Orchard, which are all on the same street, where we took vacant land and a vacant parking lot and transformed them into a park, a garden, and a small miniature orchard, where this was once land that was either like lighted on, unused, not serving a purpose in the community, where now they become community staples, where residents are, with the garden, they're able to access free produce. The park, they're able to, go play. Residents are able to take their children to play. They can sit around, they can relax because it's a large space where they're able to socially distance and still like provide their children a space to go hang out and play in. With our orchard, it's a small like little space where you can come sit and you could like relax and etc. So by having access to like this green space, you're allowing yourself to be connected to the environment, be outdoors, and stay active and healthy. But then also you're promoting environmental stewardship by encouraging residents to, and that comes with the sustainability portion, you're encouraging residents to take care of the space. This is their space. They're the owners of this space. While we help them take care of this space, it's up to them to ensure that this space stays like clean, it stays accessible, it stays, what they want it to be. That we work with residents to do community cleanups. We teach residents how to garden. We teach residents like how to like plant, more of the floral plants, etc. So we try to aim different like programs and different projects within these spaces to cater to residential wants and needs, while still teaching them how to take care of that land and become those environmental stewards of these spaces and projects.
Dolores Perales with Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision. Dolores, I know your organization is located in Southwest Detroit. You focus on Southwest Detroit. For those that don't live directly in your community, or for those that live outside of the Detroit borders here in Oakland County, why should they care about your organization, and how can they also get involved?
Yeah, so Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision. We're the only environmental nonprofit located on the southwest side of the city. Southwest Detroit, we face a lot of different issues. So we're home to approximately 46,000 residents. This section of Detroit has Michigan's only oil refinery as a sewage treatment plant that serves over 126 communities. It has the busiest border crossing between the U.S. and Canada, 3 major freeways, 3 steel mills, a 300-acre intermodal freight yard, as well as various oil, metal, and waste processing industries. So living amongst these industrial components have negatively affected the lives of residents here in Southwest Detroit. And what SCEV does is we work to stop these injustices and create a healthier living environment for the community. So individuals outside of Southwest Detroit definitely should care, because they heavily rely on the industry that is located within our neighborhoods. However, they aren't experiencing all the environmental injustices that we are currently facing while living here within Southwest Detroit, whether that's through the horrible air quality that we breathe every single day, to the land to the incompatible land use where there's so much like dumping. It's crazy where we're definitely trying to combat these issues and make sure that a Southwest Detroit resident has the same livelihood as an individual living out in the suburbs. So individuals should care because they heavily rely on these industries that are located here. But a lot of people don't know that all of these components are just shoved in this one corner of the city. But if any individuals would want to get involved, all they would have to do is, email us at info@scvweb.org. And that's the best way to get a hold of us if they want to help volunteer. There's a variety of different projects that they can volunteer with, whether that's working in our green space projects like Urban Gardens, Garthany Park, our Mary Street Orchard to kind of help with that impactful land use and work on, food sovereignty issues that we're having in Southwest, and just kind of work on food sovereignty and providing access to fresh, healthy foods to residents, or even working in our healthy air. So working on canvassing projects, community development, letting residents know their rights and what's going on within the city, where we all have an understanding, we all know what's going on, but it's always, very helpful to provide the information to residents and let them know what they can do about it. So there's always canvassing opportunities. There's opportunities to learn from residents through canvassing. So asking them questions about how, what's going on in your own home. How does this impact you directly? And so that's something that we always need help with is, working on those canvassing projects. But then also just working within our land and water, our healthy air department, or just in general, just supporting us with our variety of projects, just whether that be sharing our information to other residents within Southwest or outside of Southwest Detroit. But like you said in Oakland County, just sharing our information, letting people know what's going on and spreading the message, spreading the word. And then if you're able to coming in directly volunteering with us to kind of have that hands-on experience and see what is going on directly within our community.
So Dolores, real quickly before we let you go, one thing, volunteer opportunities, can people do that in person?
Yes.
So that's okay right now, you are allowing them. And also I noticed on your website your organization was doing a bottle drive. Tell me a little bit about that, and if I have bottles to donate, how can I get them to you?
Yes. So, like I said, we are taking in-person volunteering, but we are following strict COVID guidelines. So, social distancing, wearing a mask, etc. And before volunteering, making sure you're filling out a self-disclosure form, letting us know that you aren't having any type of COVID symptoms, etc. But then that is all, a self-disclosure. So if you do feel comfortable volunteering in person, we are more than happy to have you, and we're more happy to accommodate you or a group less than 10, as we're only taking in about 10 people at a time to volunteer with us per day. And then with the bottle drive, we are collecting pop cans and bottles. So we know over quarantine, a lot of people have, accumulated a lot of pop cans, a lot of bottles, a lot of, beer bottles, etc. So we are collecting those bottles because we know that while the pop can returns have opened up slightly again, the lines are outrageous. A lot of times people just don't have the ability to take all those cans back. So if, you want to help out our cause, we are doing a bottle drive, collecting, whether that's pop cans, beer cans, liquor bottles, etc. We're taking all those in, and we'll be taking those in to be processed and recycled as well. So if some of them are unable to, be used to get that 10 cents back, we'll be recycling them regardless. So it's a way to not only help the environment, but then also support our organization. And if anybody would like to drop off any bottles, they would just have to email us at info@sdbweb.org, or give us a call, and all that information is on our website. And they would just let us know, schedule a time to come in, and then they could drop off the bottles that they have to us.
Dolores Perales, Environmental and Community Sustainability Specialist with Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision. Thank you so much for being with us on the Oakland County Megacast.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Such great work that they are doing over there. We appreciate them coming on the Oakland County Megacast and sharing all their information about the good work that they are doing to working today for cleaner tomorrow, the environment impacting all of us. We are going to take a quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast, and when we return, we are going to stay outdoors and talk about parks on the Oakland County Megacast.
Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards, back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart, keep wearing a mask in public, and if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus. Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. You're listening to 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. And joining us next on the Oakland County Megacast is going to be Matt Schaerer, Park Operations for the West Bloomfield Parks, who is our Facebook Partner of the Day. Matt, you have to be crazy busy right now because the parks are exploding.
Yes. I would say a month after COVID-19 hit, the parks have just been filled almost every day, every single one of our parks.
So as the operations manager, a member of the operations side of the house, what exactly do you do every day?
Well, because of COVID-19, everything's kind of changed. We had to hire a lot less people than we normally do for seasonal wise. And so a lot of the full-time staff, we are doing a lot more cleaning of our buildings. We have a lot more mowing to do, just general maintenance stuff that we're doing. So now, this morning, for example, I was cleaning the south end of our park system. So I was at Drake Sports Park today, cleaning it up, trying to make it look nice before coming on here today. I went to Arrowhead, which is the main parking lot for our entire trail network, and was there cleaning that place up. So that was just what I did today. Probably this afternoon, I'll be on a mower mowing over at Keith Sports Park because we're short-staffed, like I said. So if I'm not doing any of that, we're doing some special projects. We have a couple of pollinator gardens we're trying to install. We are, if there's a storm, we're cutting trees down. So it really varies from day to day.
We're speaking with Matt Schaerer, Park Operations for the West Bloomfield Parks. Busy time for you guys, but are you excited? And at least one part of all of this coming out is that people are actually getting outside and taking advantage of the gym that is in their backyards, and that being the West Bloomfield Parks.
Yeah. About 2 weeks ago, I was at Bloomer Park, which is off Richardson Road near Green Lake Road. And we were doing some work there, and we had an older lady show up, and she was like, "This park's great. You guys are doing a great job." And right before she left, she said she'd lived in the area for over 20 years, and this was the first time she'd been to Bloomer Park. So we are getting a lot of people like that from all across the township checking out this park because some of these people don't have anything to do but go walk in a park.
That's just amazing to me that they haven't been out there. But for the people who, let's just say someone is watching and listening right now, and maybe they haven't been out there to any of the West Bloomfield parks, give us some highlights of what is your best features, and do you guys have anything new coming up, or have you had to put things on hold just so you can try to maintain what you do have?
Well, Drake Sports Park, like I was talking about earlier, is in the south part of our township. And it's what it is. It's actually a sports park. It's where we have 3 ball fields, and we have 2 big areas that are soccer fields most of the time. And if we're not playing baseball or softball, you might see cricket on the weekends. That's big overseas, and it's definitely ramping up over here. Definitely check it out. It's completely different than baseball. Marshbank was renovated about 10 years ago, and the highlight here is we have a really nice fishing pier. Last week, there were, I don't know, at one point, 15 people on the fishing pier fishing. And then we have a kayak launch and canoe launch there as well. That's the big thing. And at both Drake and Marshbank, we have a nice walking path to walk around. And so there's quite a lot of people that are just on that walking, doing laps, trying to get their steps in.
Matt Schaerer with us. He's a park operations staffer at West Bloomfield Parks with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And Matt, as more people have been engaging with our local parks as a means of recreation, just getting out of the house, getting some activity, what new challenges, especially with them being more on the playgrounds, more on the facilities such as the pickleball courts and the tennis courts and so on, the baseball fields, yep. What new challenges does that present for your staff and for park staff in maintaining these parks that's different from in normal times with all this extra activity?
Well, it's really just being able to access whatever we're trying to work on. Before what we would call summer, we were having to actually shut down for 4-hour span on mowing days, the days we were at Marshbank and at Drake mowing. There were just so many people that we felt it wasn't safe for us or them to mow. So we actually shut the park down for about a 4-hour span on those days, just so we were uninterrupted during that time. When we had camps pick up after, when summer break was supposed to start, we actually had to stop that. And that's kind of actually been okay. We are just running around a lot more. If we can't get something done that day, then we'll try and do it the next day, and we'll try and get there earlier. And sometimes we just can't get something done and we have to wait and do it another day.
As someone who does take advantage of your parks, and I will say you guys do an amazing job, especially knowing how many parks that you have to try to maintain, what does your staffing levels look like going into the fall, especially now, because I would imagine that you rely on high school and college kids, and if they're going back to school, does that leave another hole in your employee roster?
Yes, it definitely does. In the perfect world, before COVID-19 hit, the full-time staff like myself would do some special projects throughout the park system during the summertime. And some of our seasonal staff would do some of the cleaning and things of that nature. This year, we kind of had to do a little bit of a hiring freeze, so us full-timers are doing more of that. And we actually, we had one of our longtime seasonals, he got another job, good for him. And so yesterday was his last day. And so that's one less person we have now. So we won't be able to do some of those special jobs that we are used to doing anymore. We'll have to pick up and do some of the more mundane tasks, but they're just as equally important, which is why people love coming to our parks, cleaning the bathrooms, making sure everything looks pretty, picking up all the trash on the ground, because there's been quite a bit of that because of everyone showing up. And so we always have our hands full. So hopefully next year will be a little bit different. We'll be able to hire some more people. People will want to come and work for us. So that's hopefully the case.
Matt Schaerer with us. It's Parks Operations Staffer at West Bloomfield Parks with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And Matt, you mentioned that a lot of these special projects are put on the back burner because of short staffing and prioritizing during COVID-19. However, one special project that does go on is your partnership with West Bloomfield Parks naturalists in their invasive species mitigation program. Explain for those who may not be familiar with that, what that program is and how your staff partners with the naturalists in order to put that program to action.
Well, it is exactly what it sounds like. Most of what we do for invasive species is related to plants. There are a lot of plants in West Bloomfield Township that are considered invasive. And so myself, along with my coworkers, work with the naturalists to identify some of the areas in our park system that have invasive species present. And we kind of come up with a game plan about when the time of year works for us to remove that said species, if we're even able to remove it. Maybe it'll be a one-time thing. For example, Phragmites is an invasive species, prevalent all throughout Michigan, Southeast Michigan, definitely in West Bloomfield. And that is a fall project that we take on. It's best to take care of it in the fall, so coming on up. And we are going to be focusing on that probably for the next month, finding, and I've actually went out about 3 weeks ago and found a whole bunch of areas in our park system where it was growing, and we're going to hopefully tackle that this month. We have an outside contractor coming in to help us because some of these spots are they're as big as football fields. So we'll hopefully be taking care of that soon.
Yeah, I know sometimes when I'm out along the trail, I'll see signs informing the public of some of these species. So as a member of the public, how can they help with what you and your staff is doing?
Honestly, the best thing that they can do is whatever you call home, if you're going to make your garden area or your house beautiful, try and plant native species. For example, there's a plant called buckthorn, which is an invasive. It is all over West Bloomfield. It's all over our trails. And it was planted in the 1800s for hedging around hedges because it looked nice and it would keep people out. And now it's everywhere. So instead of buckthorn, maybe we should have planted something else. So when you're trying to do any kind of landscaping, focusing on native plants would be great. If you have some invasives, you can always call our naturalists. They can help identify websites that you can look up, see if you have an invasive species problem for plants, remove them, and that will also help as well. That's probably the biggest thing that people can do.
I will tell you, buckthorn is not easy to get rid of. Our backyard was filled with it, and it was the hugest pain, and it just keeps coming back. It's like a gremlin.
Yes, the seeds can last in the ground for 7 years. So it's a long-term issue that you got to deal with. And once you can, you get rid of it, you got to keep on top of it. Yeah, for sure.
So Matt, you talked a little bit about the employees. I know that you started out as a part-timer.
Yep.
Can like the young kids that might be interested, are you guys going to try to hire some more of these seasonal people going into the fall on a part-time basis? And if someone is interested, can you talk a little bit about how this can lead to full-time jobs and help build a resume?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great, I'll be honest, when I first started off, I chose this job because I was able to be outside all day. That was the first, when I was 18, that's the main reason I chose this job. And then when I went off to college, I actually went off for a different major, and that quite didn't work out for me, which happens, and decided that I was going to choose Parks and Recreation as an opportunity for myself, which is what I did. And I have been super happy with that. I think you gotta love the outdoors from my standpoint. You gotta love the outdoors, but most importantly, you gotta like working with people. This is a service industry first and foremost. So if you don't wanna work with people or help people out, probably not your cup of tea. And as it comes to resume building, it's just like any other job, showing up on time. When I showed up and I was actually doing what I was supposed to be done, I was given more and more responsibility, and well, now I'm a full-timer. And so, like I said, one of our seasonals just left to get a full-time job. I know that he, because of the great work he did here, when there was a reference, I know my boss has said he did a good job and can get counted on, because we count on our seasonal help. So when we hire you as a seasonal, it's not just you're a seasonal employee, you're one of us. They basically do the same job as we do, and it's just, there's a huge help when they're here. And you'll definitely make a difference and help the community when you're working with us as well. And for the most part, I think everyone kind of is very grateful for the work we do, and they love the parks. So we're happy with that. Matt
Schaerer with us, Parks Operations staff at West Bloomfield Parks, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Matt, just to transition a little bit, you, your wife, and your 2 kids live in the local area. Your kids are going to be in our West Bloomfield school. School's starting this week. It's different than any other students coming in have ever experienced. What are your thoughts as a parent coming into this special school year with your kids now entering the West Bloomfield School District?
I'm excited because they're actually going to be given the opportunity for that. There are a lot of school districts around that the children are not being given that opportunity. And my son, he is going to be in kindergarten, and he doesn't really know any different. And so my wife and I have basically been saying that this is normal, which is kind of hard to fathom for us, but for him, he doesn't know any different. And so I would just encourage anyone that has a kid who's in kindergarten. Yes, it might be totally scary and different for you, but your son or daughter has no idea what normal is. And so if you can make this seem as normal as possible, nothing is wrong, I would highly encourage that. My son is super excited to go to West Bloomfield schools, even though it's for half a day. And I'm super happy that that's the case, because I know there's some kids that are scared, but we've just been trying to be super happy. So that's all I can tell other parents to do.
But I bet you make a great outdoor teacher for your kids.
Yeah. We, during the height of the stay-at-home order, on some of the days when I had to watch my kids because their daycare was shut down, we went to the nature preserve off of Arrowhead Road, and we saw baby deer running all over the place and all sorts of birds. So it was great.
Matt Schaerer with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Just another minute or two with us. Anything that you want the public to know about the parks? I know we have you on quite a bit, but also just how they can help you and your team. One thing, like trash, pick up your trash, people. Come on.
I was actually going to say, if I had one thing to say, please pick up your trash. It's a little bit different now that people can meet in small groups, but when people weren't allowed to, people were showing up at the parks and circling their cars up and then throwing all their trash on the ground in the parking lot. And it drove myself and all my coworkers crazy. It's getting better, but please pick up your trash.
See, I'm not alone in that. It's my pet peeve.
Yes, it's all of our pet peeves. Yes, you drop something, of course it happens. But you just don't randomly drop your drink cup and your entire bag of Arby's or Wendy's and leave it on the ground. That just doesn't happen. So please pick up or put it in our trash can. So that's fine. We'll change the trash can to 100 times a day versus picking it up off the ground.
I will say, too, as someone that lives on the trail network, thank you for the poo bag stations for people's pets. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't use them or take advantage of them, but it is a good service. It's a great service, and just another great thing that you guys provide to the community.
Yes, it's. I think some of the signs we've put up in the past say it's the number 3 pollutant is dog poop. So it's not natural, like some people say. Pick it up, throw it away, please. So.
I concur so much. Well, Matt, thanks so much for being with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And also, thank you to the West Bloomfield Parks for always being generous with your time, your information, and being our Facebook partner today. So again, anyone, you can watch us on civiccentertv.com, or you can head over to their Facebook page. Click on that, and you can watch the Megacast from there today. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Go out and enjoy this great weather. We've had an amazing summer.
Yes, enjoy it, please.
We'll take a quick break here on the Megacast, and then when we come back, we'll take another quick look at today's headlines.
Michigan, We're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonae Caldoon. I'm the Chief Medical Executive for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The people who are at highest risk of getting severely ill from COVID-19 are the elderly and those with chronic medical conditions. That includes people with heart disease, diabetes, COPD, or those who have compromised immune systems. People who are in those categories should right now be staying at home as much as possible and not going out if it is not essential. If you fit into one of those categories, those are the things you should do. And if you have a family member who fits into one of those categories, you should be checking in on them and making sure they are following those guidelines. There's something everyone can do to protect the community from COVID-19.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keefe. And this is the Megacast. You can watch us on Civic Center TV or on Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Listen to us on the radio, 89.3 Lakes FM and 88.1 FM The Biff. For those of you with the cable TV, Channel 15 on Comcast, Channel 99 on AT&T. The Oakland County Megacast brought to you live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, right here on Civic Center TV. And Tyler, a Megacast is something that is a bit new and a bit unique.
It is. It's not just a regular TV broadcast or a radio broadcast. Not quite the same thing as a simulcast where you're on multiple different outlets. It's not even just a simple webcast. It's a little bit of all of that, and we take that and combine it into a partnership between various community outlets to be able to give you as much information as you can as you possibly could need each and every morning for 2 hours live and on demand throughout the day as well, in as many possible outlets, so that no matter where you are, what you're doing, what time of day it is, you can get the information you need to know in an extensive manner from our team.
And one way that we do that is to bring you the latest headlines. So if you go to civiccentertv.com every morning prior to the show, we do update this information. And one of the big stories today, as the school year approaches, some parents are turning to so-called learning pods to help with their child's education. The pods typically are made of 3 to 7 children, often in the same neighborhood, as a way to help working parents secure reliable childcare. It also gives kids a break from computer screens and the ability to interact with peers. There is some concern, though, that these so-called learning pods could be widening the opportunity gap because some parents can't afford to hire tutors or a nanny to oversee the group. But sometimes these learning pods don't have to be so formal. Maybe it is someone in your neighborhood or, within your family that can help monitor these kids to make sure that, okay, maybe on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, this parent will oversee this group of kids and helping them with their learning process. Tuesdays, Thursdays, it's another member. And then, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a tutor or a nanny, but maybe if people pull their resources together and they can all help one another out.
Obviously, childcare is going to be a major issue. It already is a major issue as we're returning our kids to school. And so part of the solution could potentially be these community support networks that provide childcare in a platooned nature, so, such as like you were saying, with maybe it's switching off and it's a carpool, so to speak. situation where one day it's this set of parents and another day it's this set of parents and another day it's this set of parents. They're bringing all these kids in and monitoring their schooling on any given day, and then it cycles through. Maybe that's a solution. A lot of these things, a lot of these issues are going to have to find solutions at the community level because the state, the federal government are not providing specific resources for childcare despite it being such a major issue. So learning pods, one of those ways that solution's being made at the community level.
Yeah, I think that we saw in March, childcare was an issue, but maybe not as much of an issue because a lot of businesses were closed down and people were working remotely. But now more and more people are going back into the office or back to their jobs. So one way that this could also work is, by having that pod, you're keeping that group together, and that is also going to limit their exposure to other kids and people outside of somewhat of this little group.
Yeah, that there is that situation. So obviously with anything related to childcare or to your children in general, you want to be careful with that. You want to make sure that that these parents and these families are taking the precautions. They're pretty much staying to their own domicile if they're not going out for something essential like food or whatever the case or other resources that they may need. And on top of that, you want to make sure that obviously you want to make sure that the people who are taking care of your kids, whether it be for a day or be for a week or be for a couple of days during the week, whatever the case may be. So obviously take precautions that you need to take to make sure your kids are in a safe situation if they're in a pod like this.
Yeah, because obviously when people are not following the guidance and the mandates that are in place right now, something such as what's happening at CMU could continue to happen. 38 students have now tested positive for COVID-19 at the end of just the first week of classes at Central Michigan University. University officials issued a warning to students to stop throwing large parties, or the college could be forced to switch to remote learning. Following the surge in cases, students were also reminded they could face fines or even suspension from school if they attend large parties. Tyler, this is not surprising, but schools are doing so many things, putting so many protocols in place to try to prevent this from happening. But at the end of the day, if the students don't follow the procedures and protocols put in place, we're going to continue to see things such as this. Hard to mandate and oversee what's happening off campus.
Yeah, that's really going to be tough without putting provisions in place that are, frankly, invasive to your students. So, again, it goes on that honor system, but with all the contact tracing that's being done at county levels, it's being done definitely at the state level, if someone does have an infection from going to all these large gatherings and going to these parties and they're able to trace them back to those situations, knowing what they are, their college party, you have enough evidence there to really say, well, obviously that's where it started. These students are not following the guidelines. These students are being a problem, and there has to be a way to enforce that in a manner that's going to get the attention of these students, because if they don't believe that the consequences are worse than the fun that could come from the situation, they're gonna party 10 times out of 10.
So to the students out there, think of it this way. How do you explain to mom and dad that you're suspended from school because you went to a party? Don't think that's going to go over so well. So maybe just put that in the back of your mind. Also on civiccentertv.com under coronavirus, the state fair is going virtual. 2020 Michigan State Fair will not be held at the Suburban Collection Showplace in Novi. Instead, it's going to be offered in a virtual format. So the fair is going to be held September 3rd through the 7th. It's going to be a free online event. It will include hourly social media posts of interactive contests, activities, live demonstrations, performances, historical and educational features, and more. This is going to be interesting to see how they pull this off. But of course, during COVID-19 and this pandemic, all avenues of our world trying to find ways to be creative, to still exist. And this is how the fair is going to do it virtually.
Yeah, interesting to see that this is the method that they're taking. It's daring, it's bold, it's something different. The state fair is such an interactive thing that moving it to virtual could really just take away from the whole state fair feeling that you're used to getting. But with all the interactivity, with all the games, they're doing their part to make sure that this is still heavily engaging, heavily entertaining. It's turned more into a state variety show than a state fair. And I think that that's going to continue to attract people to it. And if it's something that works out well, these kinds of methods could be incorporated into future state fairs as well.
Yeah, because, there are a lot of people that just can't make it to the state fair. Maybe you live on the other side of the state and you can't make it. So this is a way to make it easily accessible to all people. Although I will say virtual cannot replace getting a candy apple at the fair, riding the rides, and petting the goats for the first time.
No, it's definitely an experience that is one of a kind in the state of Michigan. The state fair is something that people look forward to every year. And, it's relatively the same stuff each and every year over, but people keep coming back because they love the experience, they love the interactivity, they love being out there with all the different variety of vendors and activities that they can do in person on a nice warm day in the state of Michigan. And that's not going to be the case this year for the state fair, but maybe we'll see, and it will end up being something that is really interesting, and even despite the circumstances still has that same Michigan State Fair feel.
So you'll find that and more on civiccentertv.com. Also on civiccentertv.com, you'll see that we're trying to make everything easy for you as we continue to navigate COVID-19. You'll find links to CDC resources as well as the state of Michigan, Oakland County, and all of our local municipalities. Also, we are on the homepage. If you head over there, you will find that we put clips from the interviews of all of our previous guests. And so if you missed something, you will be able to find that, or maybe you didn't have time to sit through our show for an entire 2 hours. So if you want to just go ahead and go to civiccentertv.com, click on the individual email or the individual link to that individual, such as Dave last week speaking about all the great travel places throughout the state of Michigan. How is the travel and tourism industry navigating COVID-19 during this time? So a lot of great information in one place for you, one click away.
Yeah, and we have those full interviews so you can watch with all the detail. We also have those short clips that provide you those nice little bites of information, the most important things that are said on any given show from any given guest, and give you the information in as quick of a manner as possible. So no matter what kind of time you have, if you have 2 hours to watch the full show, if you have 15 minutes or 20 minutes to watch an interview here or there, or you just have a few minutes and want to get the best of the best, we have that opportunity for you on our website.
So for all of those out there in non-broadcast land, this is what we call trying to stretch, because we are waiting to get connected to our next guest. However, I believe that we are still waiting for a little bit. So in the meantime, we're going to take another quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast, hopefully be able to connect with the top election official in the state of Michigan. You're listening to and watching the Oakland County Megacast.
Hi, I'm Dr. Faust, the medical director for the Oakland County Health Division. The most important thing you can do to prevent the spread of illness is to wash your hands thoroughly and often. Follow these 6 easy steps every time you wash your hands. Step 1. Turn on the sink and wet your hands with warm water. Step 2. Apply soap to your hands and lather between your fingers, under your nails, and the front and back of your hands and wrists. Step 3. Wash your hands by scrubbing them together for at least 20 seconds. Step 4. Rinse your hands with warm, clean water. And step 5. Dry your hands with a clean cloth towel, a paper towel, or hot air blow dryer. If you're using a cloth towel, make sure to change it often. For handheld faucets, turn off the water using a paper towel instead of your bare hand. Step 6. If you're using a paper towel, throw it away. Practice healthy habits like washing your hands after coughing or sneezing into them to keep you and others healthy. Go to oakgov.com/health or call Nurse on Call at 1-800-848-5533 to learn more.
Michigan, the coronavirus pandemic has put us all to the test. And now it's time to put COVID-19 to the test. As we move forward, testing will be critical. We encourage anyone who has reason to get tested to do so, those with symptoms and those without. If you are leaving home and going back to work, get tested. If you think you may have COVID-19 or you've been exposed recently through family, friends, or coworkers, get tested. Our test locator tool can help you find the right testing site that fits your needs. Even if you're looking for easy access with no cost, no prescription, and no appointment necessary, we've got you covered. Help Michigan move forward, not backward. To find a testing site or learn more, visit michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards, back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart, keep wearing a mask in public, and if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus.
I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keefe. You're listening and watching the Oakland County Megacast. We are going to bring in Kelly Fleming, Senior Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Oakland University. Kelly, thank you for being with us on the Oakland County Megacast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So can you tell us, school's just about to start. Excited? I mean, this is a crazy time for these students, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited to have students back with us this fall. We'll have students both on campus and online with us as well. And so we have a brand new class getting ready to start. We have students coming back, so we're excited to welcome them back to campus both in person and virtually.
So Kelly, how is the decision made about when to bring them back or how to bring them back virtually versus in person?
Yeah, the university has been working really closely with public health officials to determine what's going to be the best method to keep our students safe and help them really finish their degrees in a timely manner as well. So as I mentioned, we'll have a combination of offerings for our students this year. A majority of classes will be online, both synchronous and asynchronous. And then we'll also have a small number of students on campus. About 20% of classes will meet in person, but it's going to look different. We'll be masked and social distancing on campus, so it'll look a little bit different.
So some of the students, because of everything that's going on, some want the college experience and have been considering doing gap years. Do you recommend that? Don't recommend that? And do you think that they could lose out on part of this experience if they do take a gap year?
Yeah, it's definitely dependent upon the specific student situation. We typically don't recommend a gap year. At Oakland, we don't see a lot of requests for gap years typically. We might see some students that are doing perhaps some religious work, or they might be in the military, or things of that nature is what we typically see students take a gap year for. We don't typically recommend it, especially, in times like these when students potentially could do online coursework and, stay on track to graduate. We don't always see students come back after that gap year. The workforce might be not the best option for them right now. And they could lose out on financial aid that they've already worked really hard to earn. And so we wouldn't want to see that happen for students. So if students are considering the gap year, we definitely recommend that they talk to us about their specific situation, and we would see what we could do. But overall, we don't usually recommend it. We'd like to see students get started on that degree, progress through that degree, and then enter the workforce with that degree.
Kelly Fleming with us, Senior Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Oakland University. And Kelly, on that note, with financial aid and assistance that is available to returning students through the Federal CARES Act, there is some funding that is available through Oakland University for students that are returning. Can you go into details about what that funding can go towards and how students may be able to apply for it, as that's still available to them?
Yeah, there is actually aid still available for a limited amount of time. Even if students have received some of that grant money previously, if circumstances have changed, they have additional needs, they could definitely apply for additional aid, which I think is important for them to know. So if a student was enrolled with us when the pandemic hit in March, they can apply through our financial services office for that emergency grant money, and for a wide variety of things that may have come up for them, that they may be struggling financially. You know, we want to make sure that, you know, they have money to help pay for school, but that they've got other, you know, necessities covered as well. So they can apply right on the financial aid website, and indicate their needs. And like I said, even if they were OU students previously, they were enrolled during this pandemic, they've maybe earned a little bit of grant money, you know, to help pay for some things. If things have changed, then we would want them to reach out to us, and we could see what we could do to help them there too.
Kelly Fleming, Senior Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Oakland University, who is also our Facebook partner of the day, and we appreciate that. We're seeing a lot of students remote learning right now. Are there advantages and disadvantages to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, I've mentioned a few times, it definitely depends on the student and, you know, what their strengths are. But there's a lot of resources on campus. As we've, you know, been working in this more virtual environment over the last few months, we've transitioned all of our student services to also be virtual options as well. So if students are concerned about their ability to be successful in the virtual online remote class environment, we've definitely got resources to help them. So all of the student services, tutoring center, writing center, academic advising, counseling, everyone that is employed on campus to help support students is still working really hard to do that for students, and they can do that in a virtual environment. So if students feel most comfortable in an online course and working with us in a virtual capacity, we can definitely accommodate that and help them find some strategies. Some of our students have been taking online courses for a long time. Some of our students, this is new for them, and so there's definitely kind of a transition happening, and so we definitely want to support them through that. So in addition to the specific student, some benefits to students is that they're, you know, able to save some money by not commuting to campus. They're saving a little bit of time by not coming to campus. You know, if they're concerned about health, you know, they can stay at their residence and do their coursework. So we see some good things in that regard. We're able, you know, to still see students interacting with one another and learning from one another. As I mentioned, there's two types of online courses. Some of them are still meeting live stream where students are talking real time to each other. We've also got traditional online courses where they may be communicating with each other in open forums. So there's definitely some positives to students being able to take courses this way. It's definitely more flexible if they're still working. You know, we see some students that, you know, are going to see a little bit of a transition, but we're hoping that all of these services are available to help them transition, and it won't be too hard going forward in the fall for them to do so.
Kelly Fleming with us. She is the Senior Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Oakland University. So kids are returning to school. Seniors are returning to high school this year, still getting ready to go on to their next step after this unprecedented year ahead of them. Same with high school juniors who are looking into colleges, have taken their tests and are applying. What should those high school upperclassmen be doing right now, even during this year under these circumstances, to prepare themselves for the admission process and even for when they do eventually go off to higher education, if that's their choice?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely still an abundance of resources available for students who are going into their senior year of high school and looking to attend college next year. We have been working really hard to make sure that there are virtual options for students during this time. So students can still connect with colleges that they have interest in. There's a variety of virtual college fairs. We participate in the National Association of College Academic Counseling Fairs. Those students can sign in right from their computers or phones at home and chat with us. See presentations, ask questions. So we're definitely still going to be available in those formats for some quick Q&As. We're offering a lot of events. We typically would bring students for faculty and current students in this virtual space too. So there's a lot of what students could have been doing, you know, pre-pandemic, they're going to be able to do virtually with us. I think one important thing for students to know is that a lot of schools, including Oakland, have gone test optional for the fall of 2020. So those students still enrolling for this September, and then for next year's class as well. And so there are definitely potential changes to the admissions process that they may have learned about last year. So that's why it would be important to definitely connect with the schools they're looking at applying to. But it's definitely going to work in their benefit.
Going back to seniors, such a big part of making that all-important decision as to which college to attend comes down to those college visits. What's that going to look like this year?
Yeah, we've started doing in-person campus tours again, really small numbers, socially distanced. So students can still come to campus if they feel comfortable and start to see what campus looks like and interact with our current students. We're also continuing to offer a virtual tour with current students. So if families can't travel, if they're from out of the area or they're not comfortable coming to campus, we absolutely can still connect with them and show them what campus life is like. We're anticipating that campus life is going to return to a more typical experience here in the future. So we're definitely willing and able to show students what the virtual experience looks like and what the on-campus experience looks like. So I think for students who are looking in the future, hopefully this spring we'll have an opportunity to get them on campus even more, but they can definitely still do those initial fact-finding and finding which schools might be the best fit for me, right now as well. That's absolutely doable.
Kelly Fleming with us. She's from the Undergraduate Admissions Department at Oakland University, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And Kelly, for those that are going to be on campus and are coming back this fall, what programs are in place for them, given the pandemic is still going to have an impact on their college life and their education? What's going to be new at OU for these students?
Yeah, campus life is going to look a little bit different because we'll all be in black and gold Golden Grizzly masks when we're on campus. We'll be social distancing, but there's still going to be programming for students. We still have students coming to the residence halls. Our Office of Student Involvement is still working to provide really great campus programming for students. Like I mentioned, we still have student services available in person and virtually as well. So students will be able to hopefully connect with anyone on campus they would have before, just at a more socially distant experience. But our goal is that, we want students to be able to learn from one another, interact with their faculty. We want them to be able to kind of gain all of those skills and experiences while they're on campus with us. So we'll be looking to still do those things. It'll just look a little bit different for the time being.
Kelly, one last quick question before we let you go. Can students still enroll for the upcoming semester?
Absolutely. We try to be as flexible as possible with students always, but we know this year especially students really, are taking this decision for college really seriously and what's going to be the best fit for them and what's going to be the safest option for them, and we want to support them in that. So we did go test optional for freshmen for fall 2020. So students need to send us an application, which is free, and a high school transcript, and we can still admit them if they haven't applied with us previously. We're still assisting students through the orientation process right now. Classes don't start until the 3rd of September, so we have a little bit of time to do that. And we're also assisting transfer students right now. There's, as students are trying to figure out what their schools are doing, if they've met their credit maximums at the community colleges and things like that, we'll be helping students enroll as transfer students as well for fall. So all the way up until the start of classes, we can help those students.
We thank you so much. Kelly Fleming, Senior Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Oakland University. Oakland University, also our Facebook Partner of the Day. Thank you so much, Kelly, and have a good day. The Oakland County Megacast will take a break, and we'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Park's COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet Wear facial coverings when you leave your home and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Kyler Keith here on the Oakland County Megacast, where every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, we bring you informational and educational interviews about important topics happening throughout Oakland County and the state of Michigan. And we are happy now to bring in our top election official, Jocelyn Benson, joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. Secretary, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
What a crazy time right now to be in your position. The mail-in voting situation in the state of Michigan, where do things stand now?
Well, first, every citizen has a right to vote by mail in Michigan, and so we're focused on getting people their ballots and making sure they have options to return them if indeed they choose to vote prior to Election Day, which you have, again, a right to do in our state. So right now, you can request to vote from home or vote absentee or vote by mail or however you want to term it. And that request is available in a form on our website, michigan.gov/vote. You can submit it online or download it, sign it, and send it to your local clerk. Those ballots will then be sent around September 24th. That's 40 days prior to Election Day, so you can expect to receive it around then. And you can request the ballot you can request to vote by mail up through the Friday prior to Election Day. And but we're encouraging everyone to do so soon if you know what your preference is going to be. And of course, you'll always have the option to vote in person on Election Day as well.
Record turnout for the primary, and plus on top of the record turnout of voters, we have 1.6 million vote absentee for the August primary. What's November going to look like?
We're anticipating all those numbers are going to double. So 2.5 million voted in our August primary, will likely top 5 million for November. That's record turnout for Michigan. And we'll also see records broken for people voting by mail more than ever before. Already 2.4 million citizens have requested to vote by mail. And we're working with the post office and in consistent collaboration with them to ensure that the mail service is up to task and processing ballots effectively and smoothly. But we've also installed drop boxes all around the state in conjunction with local clerks, where citizens can return their ballot at any time up until 8 p.m. on Election Day at one of those drop boxes to ensure that it's received. So lots of options for citizens this year. And the big thing to know and remember is michigan.gov/vote is your portal for answers on all of those questions throughout the process.
Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson with us on the Oakland County Megacast all throughout the Oakland County area and our family of TV and radio stations. So the issues with the United States Postal Service has become a national issue. It's something that is being focused on in every single state in the union as this influx of mail-in voting is expected for the November election. Good to hear that there is a partnership going on and there is discussion going on between the Postal Service and the state to help alleviate that as best as possible. That being said, Secretary, do you believe that we're going to still have some major issues getting ballots in by mail in the fall, or in the fall for the November election? Do you believe that this should be a relatively smooth process?
Well, really, there's just a lot of unknowns right now. I mean, there were a lot of changes that came down that blindsided a lot of us who've been working we've redesigned our envelopes to make them more easily to go through the Postal Service. We've had continuous conversations with the Postal Service, asking the Postal Service to do an all clear every day to move all that election mail through the system so that things move smoothly. So we're doing everything we can, but we're also providing alternatives if citizens simply would like to return their ballots through other means. And remember, you can always pick up your ballot any day, 40 days prior to Election Day, so beginning September 24th, in person at your clerk's office as well. So the big thing is to ensure and do everything we can to ensure the efficiency of the Postal Service. Recognize there's a lot of variables and inefficiencies and just uncertainties right now with that. But a lot of them can be overcome if you vote early and request and return your ballot early. But even so, we want voting to be convenient for you as well. So you can request and return your ballot in person at your clerk's office, return your ballot at any time up till Election Day at 8 p.m. at a local drop box or your clerk's office. And then you always have that in-person traditional voting option in your precinct on November 3rd as well, safe and secure for you if you choose to use it.
Jocelyn Benson, Michigan Secretary of State, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Leading up to the primary, we spoke at length with many of our clerks throughout the Oakland County area. One of the issues having to do with the mail-in ballots. At the end of the day, it still takes them so long to process them. Is there anything in place or measures in place to allow them to start counting those votes early?
We need the legislature to give us the permission to give our clerks the ability to do that. Now, in many other states, that's what happens. You get the ballot, it's in an envelope, you check the signature, you open it, you sort it, you prepare it for counting, and then the counting begins on Election Day. But in Michigan, because basically our laws just haven't been updated to adjust for the new rights citizens have to vote by mail in our state that are relatively new, because of that, the laws haven't been updated to allow for the early processing of these ballots, was just simply a procedural change that needs to happen. It's not partisan at all, but of course everything becomes partisan in an election year. So that's the unfortunate thing. But my hope is the legislature will act, because that will have a direct result if they give our clerks more time to prepare our ballots to be counted on Election Day. That will mean a more efficient result and delivery of results after the polls close. But it will also, more importantly, ensure that our clerks and our election workers have additional time to prepare and do their jobs without being stressed and have to do everything really quickly in a limited amount of time that can often lead to errors and other challenges on election day.
So looking ahead to November, if those new measures aren't in place by that time, which it's looking like that's not going to happen, how much longer do you think it might take for us to be able to get the results of some of these elections because of so many mail-in ballots needing to be counted?
We're calling it election week instead of election day. I think, parts of Oakland County have taken advantage of what Clerk Lisa Brown has created with a centralized absentee counting processing board that enables a smooth and efficient processing of those ballots that actually in August delivered results quite quickly after the polls closed. So there are options for Oakland County. We may see other counties throughout the state either take advantage of those options or proceed with a less efficient process. It's really up to the clerk, and it's what's best for them. All that said, we're anticipating that we'll be on hand to support our clerks and our local election administrators as they go through the processing of counting of the absentee ballots. But then, we'll also work to make sure the public knows exactly where we are in the process throughout. Even if it takes up until Friday to get the full results of the state, we want people to know that we're on it. We're working overtime to prepare and account, and just, we're asking everyone to be a little bit patient this year as we ensure the process goes smoothly and securely.
So, Secretary, in other states, in their primaries, and as we're approaching the general election, there's been a lot of concerns about issues at the polls. People maybe not able to get in after the polls close. Some issues of potential voter suppression. What is being done from your office at the state level to prevent those issues, which haven't generally been a big issue in the state of Michigan in our elections as we approach November?
Well, we have a couple of things. One, we want everyone to know their options for voting. So there's early voting, voting by mail, and also voting in person on Election Day. If people take advantage of all those options, even with record turnout, voters will be spread out enough among all of those choices that there's not going to be overcrowding or lines for any of them. And then in our most concentrated areas like Detroit, we're opening up satellite offices and other places where people can vote early or receive and return envelopes. So we're doing a number of things to make sure the process is as convenient and secure as possible, while also working to educate the public about the choices that they have going into this fall's elections. We're also hoping that many citizens will choose to step up and serve as poll workers. That helps ensure you can serve on the front lines of elections and protect our voters that way. You can go to michigan.gov/democracymvp in order to sign up, because our poll workers, our election workers, are democracy's most valuable players in the team sport that is election administration.
I know that in the primary there were thousands of votes that were not counted because they were spoiled for one reason or another. What do you want the general public to know and to understand about the process so that their vote does count this next election?
Well, that's right. Across the state of Michigan, there were 10,000 ballots that were mailed in but unable to be counted. Some of them were legitimate reasons, and other were related to, again, aspects of our current laws that have not yet been updated. Importantly, in Michigan, ballots must be received by 8 p.m. on Election Day in order to count. Now, that usually works if the post office service is online and as efficient as possible, and if most people are voting in person, which up until this year has been the case. This is the first year where that's going to flip, and that's going to be different with more people voting by mail than ever before. And we need to update our laws to recognize that if more people are voting by mail, you need that safety net of allowing the few ballots that come in the day after Election Day to still count. Now, in the August primary, you had 6,400 ballots come in the days following the primary. This amounted to just a few dozen per jurisdiction. But that said, it's enough to statewide really have an impact on an aggregate. But at the local level, it's really not much of a heavy lift to add those additional ballots to the tabulation, especially if it's still ongoing at that point. Most other states do this, particularly for our military and overseas voters. Ballots may be delayed through circumstances that are outside of their control. So it's another change we've asked the legislature to make in the lead up to November, so to ensure that those ballots that are sent through the mail on time are counted as long as they're received shortly after Election Day, because no one should be disenfranchised through no fault of their own because of failures of the Postal Service to deliver mail on time.
Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson with us on the Oakland County Megacast on a family of TV, radio, and other media outlets. Just a couple more minutes with you, Secretary Benson. Despite the pandemic, many of the Secretary of State's office's services continue on. What are some of those services that are still available at the physical offices, and other ways that people can get other services from the Secretary of State without going to their general offices?
Well, the biggest change is that we've eliminated the wait at branch offices, meaning we can't have crowds in our branch offices due to the coronavirus pandemic. So all of our branch offices and visits are available by appointment only. We've recently extended our hours at every day in our branch office to recognize that there is a bit of a backlog because our offices were closed for a few months. So right now, our offices are open until 7 p.m. every day, and citizens can make an appointment up until 7 p.m. And those were just released on Friday, so there's plenty of appointments available on our website at michigan.gov/SOS. Now, that said, we've also expanded ways for you to renew your plates and your licenses without having to go into an office, whether it's online or whether it's through the mail or at one of the various kiosks or self-service stations that are in place in Kroger's and Myers all throughout the state. Importantly, if you just have to renew your vehicle tabs, you don't need an office visit. Most people who need to renew their licenses also don't need an office visit. So by all means, don't go to the office if you don't have to. Use one of our other terminals or renew through the email or online to save yourself some time and the headaches of having to make a special trip to a branch.
So one question for you, because I know a friend that is going through this, their license has expired. The next possible visit is like months out. What happens to someone if they are pulled over and they have been unable to get in on a timely manner to be able to renew their license? Will that be forgiven? And I know the other issue is a lot of, 16, 17-year-olds trying to get their license for their first time. They also are seeing a delay in trying to make that happen.
Yes, so that's, as I said, on Friday, we extended our office hours from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock every day, adding about 170,000 new appointments starting this week into the system, particularly for individuals with license needs who need to have their services done in person. So we also release a number of same-day appointments every morning for citizens who need to get in that day. And have a number of other workarounds as well. It is a new way of doing things, so we have to get accustomed to that. But anyone with specific questions can also just email me at secretary@michigan.gov. But we encourage everyone to also go onto the website now because we have released 160,000 new appointments all throughout the state. And so only 17,000 have been taken as of this morning. So there's still plenty of slots available. And these are between now and September 30th. that these slots are available.
Great information right there to share with all of our listeners and viewers. Jocelyn Benson, Michigan Secretary of State, we appreciate your time and thank you for being with us on the Oakland County Megacast.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Appreciate it. You too.
You're listening and watching to the Oakland County Megacast on CivicCenterTV.com, Lakes FM 89.3 and 88.1 FM, the BIF. We appreciate you sticking with us on this extended version of the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keith, and we say thank you and have a great day.